here's the trick. 5 marks per paragraph, 3 paragraphs, 15 marks. Welcome back. In this video, we're going to tackle these big 12 and 15 mark questions with a really simple structure that can get you top band marks. But first, let's say hi to the cat. Say hi to everybody. Can you give us a meow? Not in the mood to say hi? She's on a self-taught mouse hunting course at the moment. It's not going very well, so might be a reason why she's a bit... Go on and sit over here. So in section A, once you've got all of those short mark questions out of the way, you're going to come to 2 larger questions that require a bit more thought. And those are the 15 mark questions for acting and design. But like I've said before, I absolutely love these questions because they give you these bullet points that tell you the areas you need to write about. And this is going to be the basis of how you should structure your answer. So let's have a look at one of the acting questions first. Now this is from the 2022 paper, and again a reminder, you can substitute these characters and these extracts for ones in the set text that you're studying. Now you can see that this answer is worth 15 marks, and it says with reference to one extract. Now that's nice because it means we can choose an extract that we know and we're comfortable with. Describe how you would perform the role of Rose to an audience. Now just a quick caveat as well, it also says do not refer to the extract in the previous questions, so just be aware of the extract it's asking you to reference. But here it's our own choice, and it's given us 4 bullet points to look at: character motivation, voice, movement and interaction. Now there are other versions of this question because it is going to cover physical skills and vocal skills. Sometimes it's a combination of both, sometimes it might be focused on one. But whatever the bullet points are that you're given, you'll notice that every single question starts with a character motivation. Now, just so we're all on the same page, a character motivation is something that the character wants to achieve within the scene. It might be an aim, it might be an objective. Gosh, that's a hard thing to say. An objective. It's something they're trying to achieve, or something that drives them towards saying and doing what they do in the scene. So for Alem at the start of Refugee Boy, it might be to make friends, to fit in, to learn the language, or just protect himself from harm's way. At the start of scene 2, Mr. Fitzgerald's motivation might be to show that he's not a threat and to check that Alem is okay. And at the very start of the play, Mr. Kilo's motivation, Alem's father, might be to just get him safe, to get him out of the country. You get the idea. So whatever the extract and the character is that you've been given, identify the motivations first, and ideally find 3 of them. I'll come back to why this is so important later on in this video, so stay with me. Okay, so we have our 4 bullet points and we know what a character motivation is. So I want you to add in one more point to that list, and that is to quote from the extract. This is going to act like a bit of glue that pulls all your other points together, and by starting with a motivation and supporting it with a quote, gives you a really solid foundation to address voice, movement, interactions, posture, gestures, etc., whatever the question is. It means that what you're saying is directly linked to that motivation at the start, and it's supported by a specific moment. Mwah! And so that becomes the structure for every paragraph that you're going to write for those questions. So once you get used to writing a paragraph within that framework, within that structure, I guarantee you're gonna fly through these 15 mark questions. But it's one thing for me to tell you what to do, it's another thing for me to show you how this looks in practice. So I've got 2 examples from a current year 11 class that I'm going to share with you so you can see how these are applied directly to a question. Alright, so I've got an essay here. This is adapted from the 2019 paper and it's on physical skills. The question reads, explain how an actor performing Alem could use physical skills to communicate the character to an audience in scene 11, giving reasons for your ideas. In your answer, you should refer to character motivation, posture and movement, gestures and facial expressions. So let's have a look at what this student writes. She says, in this particular scene, we see Alem with the Fitzgeralds where he seems to be somewhat fitting in with the family. There's some context already. Alam's first line, "Like Ruth is my sister," is a reply to Mr. Fitzgerald saying he's part of their family. There's a quote as a reference. We can see at this point that Alam's first motivation is to attempt to feel part of the family and start his life again. Motivation. So already I've got context, I've got quotes, I've got motivations. That sets up everything to answer now the physical skills. In terms of movement, I imagine Alam to use close proxemics between him and Ruth to emphasise the relationship he's formed with her and that he feels more confident to interact with the Fitzgeralds. However, I also think the actor should stand with an upright posture. Good, so she's describing, but why? Why would you want him to stand with an upright posture? To show that he wants to make a good impression, but also reflect on a deeper level that he's afraid, therefore not wanting to do or say the wrong thing. His posture highlighting the tension. So that's really good. What she's doing is she's explaining how close she would get if she was playing the role of Alam and why. She's then also talking about his posture and why, and giving really clear examples. So we've already hit that first bullet point. Then she says, furthermore, I believe Alam at this point when speaking should use very reserved and limited gestures to again reflect that he doesn't yet feel as though he belongs and doesn't have the confidence to make any exaggerated or unnecessary movements until he gives the fiver to Ruth. So again, we're referencing gestures. Now that's good because she's giving a context. The one thing I would say on this answer is she mentions that he would have very reserved and limited gestures, but she's not actually giving a specific example as to what that reserved or limited gesture could be. So bear in mind that if you're explaining movement or gestures, give a really specific example. The same applies for things like open body language and closed body language. It's all well and good saying those things, but it's very general unless you say he folded his arms or he put his hands up in the air to show that he was not a threat. You have to be specific to get the maximum marks. But nevertheless, we've hit gestures. Let's read on. When he hands the money to Ruth, and she and Mrs. Fitzgerald accuse him immediately, I imagine him to move away from them with a scared, scrunched up face and also flinch to reflect his fear. So we've got facial expressions now as well. This shows he hasn't really been accepted by the Fitzgeralds and doesn't feel completely secure but still perseveres. In terms of facial expressions, throughout his first motivation, I believe the actor playing Alam should put on a forced smile to show that he wants the Fitzgeralds to appreciate everything that they're giving him, but in reality all he cares about is his father, hence why he gave away his pocket money. There is a really, really good example of how a single paragraph is structured. In there, she's hit every single bullet point and she's given reasons for the answers. Now, if she was a little bit more specific on the types of gestures she'd use, then she would be a little bit higher in the marks, but that is a top band answer because she's hitting every single piece of criteria. And here's the trick. If you can find 3 moments to talk about in the extract, there's your 15 marks. 5 marks per paragraph. 3 paragraphs, 15 marks. Now let's really quickly have a look at another example where we're talking about voice as well. This one was adapted from the 2022 paper with reference to one extract. Describe how you would perform the role of Alam to an audience. Now in this example, again, it's an acting question, but this time our bullet points refer to character motivation, voice, movement, and interaction. But the same structure applies. Let's take a look. In the beginning of this extract, Alan wakes up alone in an unfamiliar place, and his motivation is to find his father. Straight away, we've got a motivation. This is supported by the constant repetition of the line, "Where is my father?" which gets progressively faster and more frantic as the scene unfolds. There's our quote. In this moment, it's clear that Alam is both frightened and confused. So to show this as an actor using my voice, I would deliver these lines with a quick pace and an increasing high pitch to illustrate Alam's fear and worry towards the situation. At times, I would use a harsh tone and a loud volume when delivering the line to communicate his sense of abandonment and reinforcing his motivation to find his father. Now that is really specific and really clear about how she would use voice as an actor. In terms of movement, I imagine Alem to start on one side of the space by the bed and use a slow pace as he cautiously gestures toward the door with his hand. Now this question doesn't ask us to expand on gestures, it just says movement, and I think for this we do have a clear picture of how an actor would be moving across the space. Once he realises the door is locked, I'd have him run from wall to wall as he shouts his line, "Where is my father?" until he ends up with his back to the wall, crouched on the floor in a low status position to demonstrate his sense of defeat. Once Mr. Hardwick enters the room, Alem would be able to interact with him. And that's really important because this question asks for interactions, but at the start of this extract, he hasn't really got anyone to interact with. So this student is signposting when the interactions begin. And that's a really clever way to do it. To show his fear and hostility towards strangers, I would have Alem retreat back on his bed in an upright standing position, but would refrain from making eye contact to show that he was not a threat. So again, in that paragraph, we've got a character motivation, we've got a quote, we're hitting voice, we're hitting movement, we're hitting interactions. That is a top band answer, and it's all because it's structured in a really clear and easy to understand way. 5 marks per paragraph. 3 paragraphs, 3 moments, 15 marks in total. Now it's worth saying that this structure also applies to the design questions too, but instead of character motivations, the trick is to find 3 moments where the mood or the atmosphere changes, because it's in those moments that you can really play with the sound, the lighting, the colours, the set and the props, and you can use them to your advantage to move the extract forward. And then all you need to do is address the bullet points the design question gives you in the same way that you've just seen for the acting question. Now I'll be doing more videos on the design elements soon, so make sure you hit the subscribe button and the bell to stay notified, and don't forget to like and share this video if you found it helpful. Now just before I go, you might have a structure that really works for you, and if you're hitting the marks then that's awesome. Don't feel the need to change whatsoever. But if you are struggling to answer these longer questions, then give this structure a go. Practice some questions in relation to your set text, give them to your teachers, get some feedback, and get ahead while you can. I hope this video has been helpful for you, and I'll see you in the next one. Catch you soon.